Every country has its own literary giant who towers head and shoulders above everybody else. England, of course, has Shakespeare, Germany has Goethe, Italy has Dante, and so it goes on. But in the long history of poetry and literature, there's never been anyone like Robert Burns. Almost without exception, the enjoyment of literary greats tends to be the preserve of the learned classes and the scholars, or those who are prepared to work at their art. A full enjoyment of Shakespeare only comes with careful study. Keats, Byron and Shelley are best understood with the benefit of a knowledge of the classics. Burns, however, is the poet worshipped by the whole spectrum of society in his native land. He is an enduring delight for labourers and lawyers, doctors and dustmen, rich and poor, high and low alike. Even 200 years later, throughout Scotland his work is still enjoyed, quoted and sung by the man in the street. No other literary figure has ever enjoyed such longevity or genuine popularity across a whole society 2 centuries after his death. In England, the man in the street, when asked, may be able to mumble something about golden daffodils or some lines of Kipling or Tennyson. But it is unlikely they can sing or quote at any length or sing the songs of any of Burns's 18th century contemporaries. Yet throughout Scotland, the work of the Alloway bard is still so revered that you can stop almost anybody in the street and ask them to quote or sing something by Burns, and they will. Stopping them is the problem.
I like the Tam O'Shanter sequence when they reach the bridge. Tam, thou get thy faring in hell, they'll roast thee like a herring.
Some he meet and can eat, and some he meet that want it. But we he meet and we can eat, and to the Lord be thank it.
Ye maggots creep on Nichols' head for few sick fish of goten, and stick your claws in Nichols' head for deal about it's rotten.
Up in the morning's no for me, up in the morning early, when all the hills are covered with snow. And I can't remember the rest. It goes like
I like the bit from Tam O'Shanter when he drops all the funny stuff and just suddenly, bursts into this. But pleasures are like poppies spread. You seize the flower, its bloom is shed, or like the snow falls on the river, a moment white then melts forever, or like the borealis race that flits ere you can point their place, and something else about a rainbow which I can't quite remember.
So, what makes Burns' legacy so enduring? Why should the rude ploughman from Ayrshire enjoy such lasting popular acclaim when so many of his contemporaries have slipped into obscurity or become the preserve of learned academics in stuffy universities? To sum up, the greatness of an artist as wide-ranging as Burns is difficult indeed. But throughout Scotland, every 25th of January, thousands of Burns suppers are held where men and women try to do just that. The centrepiece of every Burns supper is the immortal memory, where one man tries to explain to others just what it is that makes Burns so special for him. The number of personal theories can be as varied as the number of suppers held in honour of the bard.
When you read through the poetry of Robert Burns, it brings home to you what Robert Burns himself was, an unselfish man who gave over to Scotland this poetry, this gift in poetry and song that everybody should be proud of. Probably not even just in Scotland, but throughout the world, where every Scotsman happens to live, because he has given a great gift.
He takes the wrappings off things and looks at things basically, down to earth sort of approach to things, takes the guilt off things. A good, honest man.
The thing that I like about Burns is he's accessible. I mean, you don't have to necessarily study the classics to know what Burns is all about. Actually, it gets me sometimes when you get Burns books with the, it's got the old Scots language and then it's got what it actually means in brackets. That annoys me to a point, but that's okay, that's life.
Oh, he's a very romantic man.
Very, very romantic.
Oh, I think so. Oh, yes. I mean, if you go down to River Doon and you sit there on a lovely sunny day and you hear the ripples of water, you can imagine why he was so romantic, can't you? I think it's lovely.
To me, they really encapsulate life as I know it the sadness of life, the joy of life, being in love, because we've all been in love. Yes, for Robert Burns, I think he's a hero. I think he's a man who wasn't given the credit he should have been given at the time.
Walking still and weary,
Born on the 25th of January 1759, Burns' early life was unremarkable. He was the son of a poor farmer, William Burness, who farmed 7.5 acres at Alloway in Ayrshire. Robert's father had built with his own hands the small cottage where the family lived. However, Robert was not the untutored ploughman he would sometimes allow himself to be pictured as. Burns was well educated by the private schoolmaster hired by his father and several other village farmers. What was true of Burns, however, was the back-breaking nature of his toil. Neither his father nor Burns himself were to have good fortune in farming, and a succession of moves to different farms proved disastrous financially for his father. In 1766, the family moved to a farm at Mount Oliphant, described by Burns' brother Gilbert as almost the very poorest soil I know of in a state of cultivation. To the buffetings of misfortune, we could only oppose hard labour and the most rigid economy. We lived very sparingly. For several years, butcher's meat was a stranger in the house, while all members of the family exerted themselves to the utmost of their strength, and rather beyond it, in the labours of the farm. To think of our father growing old, for he was now above 50, broken down with the long-continued fatigues of his life. These reflections produced in my brother's mind and mine sensations of the deepest distress. I doubt not but the hard labour and sorrow of this period of his life was in great measure the cause of that depression of spirits with which Robert was so often afflicted through the whole of his life afterwards. If Mount Oliphant was to bring depression to Burns, it also brought him into contact with wildlife of field and hill. These subjects, coupled with Burns' natural compassion for all of God's creatures, inspired him to produce some of his most noble works, chief among them, To a Mouse.
To a mouse, and turning her up in her nest with the plough, November 1785. Wee sleekit, cowrin, timorous beastie, oh, what a panic's in thy breastie. Then in the start of wassy hasty wi' bicker and brattle, I would be laith run and chase thee wi' murder and pattle. I'm truly sorry man's dominion has broken nature's social union, and justifies that ill opinion, and schmacks thee startle at me, thy poor earth-born companion and fellow mortal. I don't know why else but thou may thieve, but then per beastie thou mun leave. A demon icker na thraves a small request, I'll get a blessing with a lave, I never missed. Thy wee bit hussy too in ruin, its silly was the winds are strewing, and nothing new to big a new yin of foggage green, and bleak December's winds ensuing by snell and keen. Thou saw the fields laid bare and wast, and weary winter coming fast, and cosy here beneath the blast thou thocht to dwell, till crash the cruel cooter passed out through thy cell. That wee bit heap o' leaves and stibble has cost thee mony a weary nibble. Now thou's turned out for all thy trouble, but hoose are hauled to thole the winter's sleety dribble, and Craniach called. But Moosie, thou art no thy lane, in proven foresight may be vain. The best laid schemes o' mice and men gang after gly, and leave us naught but grief and pain for promised joy. Still, thou art blessed compared with me, the present only toucheth thee. But I backward cast my ee on prospects drear, and forward, though I canna see, I guess and fear.
In an effort to escape the grind of poverty at Mount Oliphant, William Burness moved to Lochlee Farm near Tarbolton. Although the land was better, the £130 per annum rent was to prove ruinous, despite the Herculean efforts of his family. Once again, William was brought to the brink of bankruptcy and fought a long court case to stave off the bailiffs. To protect the family from the possible consequences of his father's bankruptcy, the young Robert Burns himself leased another farm at Mossgiel, near Mauchline. This was to prove a prudent move, for despite winning his court case, prematurely aged and worn out from a life of toil, Burns' father William died in February 1784. O ye, whose cheek the tear of pity stains, draw near with pious reverence and attend. Here lie the loving husband's dear remains, the tender father and the generous friend, the pitying heart that felt for human woe, the dauntless heart that feared no human pride, the friend of man, to vice alone a foe, for even his failings lean to virtue's side. The family moved with Robert to Mossgiel. It was at this time that, despite his labours, Burns' eye was to turn to the fairer sex. In 1785, the first of his many illegitimate children was born. Burns' weaknesses for the affairs of the flesh was to prove his undoing on many an occasion. It has been suggested he may have been the father of as many as 14 illegitimate children, a sad state of affairs. But it has left posterity some beautifully moving poetry. His Welcome to a Bastard Wayne combines the essence of a father's love, tinged with remorse and shame for her illegitimate condition. Thou's welcome, Wayne, my shanter fa me, if thoughts o' thee or yet thy mammy shall ever daunt on me or awe me, my sweet wee lady. Or if I blush when thou shalt ca me, Tita or Daddy. Wha though they ca me fornicator and tease my name in kintra clatter, the mair they talk, I'm kenned the better, e'en let them clash, and auld wife's tongue's a feckless matter to gie in fash. Welcome, my bonny, sweet wee dochter, though you come here a wee unsought for, and though your coming I hae fought for baith kirk and choir, yet by my faith you're no unwrought for, that I shall swear. Sweet fruit, o money a merry dint, my funny toil is no a tint, though come to the world a sklent, which fools may scoff at. In my last plack, they parts be in't the better half o't. Though I should be the war bestead, thou's be as braw as beanly clad, and thy young years as nicely bred, wi' education, as ony brat o' wedlock's bed in a' thy station. Oh, wee image o' my bonny Betty, as fatherly I kiss and dote thee, as dear and near my heart I set thee, wi' as guid wall, as a' the priests had seen me get thee that's out o' hell. God grant that thou may I inherit thy mother's looks and graceful merit, and thy poor worthless daddy's spirit without his failings. 'Twill please me mair to see thee heir to it than stock it mailings. And if thou be what I would hae thee, and tak the counsel I shall gie thee, I'll never rue my troubles wi' thee, the cost nor shame o' it, but be a loving father to thee, and brag the name o' it. In 1786, Burns planned to escape his future as a debt-ridden farmer by eloping to America with Mary Campbell, known to Burns as Highland Mary. By doing so, he would also conveniently leave behind the pregnant Jean Armour, whose outraged father had issued writs against Burns. Burns, however, decided against the trip and, on the untimely death of Highland Mary, concentrated upon his poetry. This was to prove the making of Burns, because in November of that year he became an overnight success during his first visit to Edinburgh, after favourable reviews of his first book of poetry. The second edition was so successful that he was able to sell the copyright for 100 guineas, and he led a life of travel and leisure for the next 2 years. One of the few clouds on the horizon for Burns at this period of his life seems to have been a writ for the pregnant Meg Cameron for the support of her as yet unborn child, and the awkwardness over the birth of another son to Jenny Clow, servant of Burns' confidant and lover, Agnes Craig McElhose, and known to Burns as Clorinda. After a failed attempt to woo Clorinda, Burns was reunited with Jean Armour and took her for his wife in 1788. Together they moved to a farm near Dumfries, where Burns had taken a 76-year lease. Alas, the life of the poet was to prove far shorter than the optimistic lease on the farm. Worn out from the harshness of his existence, Burns was frequently ill. Once again, the farm proved ruinous, and even a move to a full-time occupation as an exciseman could not save him. Despite the fact that Burns lived his last 8 years in relative prosperity, the lasting effects of the harshness of his early life never left him, and he died in July 1796 after one of his frequent illnesses at the age of only 37. Like that other great genius, Mozart, posterity was deprived of the bulk of his output. But, thankfully, like Mozart, Burns was a prolific writer, and the output of just half of his life was equal to the whole output of many a lesser poet of longer years. The ups and downs of Burns' life shines through in his work, and the range of experience gives his output a range of feelings and emotions, from the romantic to the rational, which means that there is always something in Burns to suit our every mood. Although his moods can be complex, his work is always direct and accessible. It is never clever merely for the sake of it. It is probably the quality of being on the same level as his audience, rather than talking down to them, which makes Burns so popular. In this respect, he is more like a comfortable friend and companion with a quick wit, rather than the traditional view of the poet as the lofty artist removed from the rest of humanity. Burns wrote for universal mankind. He was a sociable man who delighted in the vagaries of his fellow creatures. At times they infuriated him, at other times he revelled in them. He undoubtedly used women, and at times was used by them. He understood them, and they him. He wrote great love poetry alongside rude doggerel, and could produce the most moving passages imaginable, then bring things back down to earth with an honest humour in the next line. Burns was never pretentious, lofty or arty, and it is this which has saved him for posterity. This comfortable mix of the profane and the profound is never more apparent than in the poem Tam O'Shanter.
Tam O'Shanter. When Chapman Billies leave the street and drouthy neighbours meet, as market days are wearing late and folk begin to tuck the gate, while we sit boozing at the nappy and getting fou and unca happy, we think now of the lang Scots miles, the mosses, waters, slaps and stiles that lie atween us and our hame, where sits our sulky sullen dame, gathering her brows like a gathering storm, nursing her wrath to keep it warm. This truth found honest Tam O'Shanter, as he frae air enechted canter. Auld air wham ne'er a touncer passes for honest men and bonny lasses. O Tam, hadst thou but been sae wise, and ta'en thine ain wife Kate's advice. She told thee weel thou was a skellum, a blethering, blustering, drunken blellum, that frae November till October, at ae market day thou wasna sober, that ilka melder with a miller, thou sat as long as thou had siller, that every nig was caught a shoe on, the smith and eager roaring foo on, that at the Lord's house, even on Sunday, thou drank wi' Kurt and Jean till Monday. She prophesied that later soon thou would be found deep drowned in Doon, or catched wi' warlocks in the murk by Alloway's auld haunted kirk. Ah, gentle dames, it gars me greet to think how many counsels sweet, how many lengthened sage advices the husband frae the wife despises. But to our tale, ae market nicht, that Tam got planted uncorrect, fast by an ingle, bleezing finely, wi' reaming swats that drank divinely. And at his elbow Souter Johnny, his ancient trusty drouthy crony. Tam looed him like a very brother. They had been fou for weeks together. The nicht drave on with songs and clatter, and aye the yell was growing better. The landlady in Tam grew gracious, with favours, secrets, sweet and precious. The suitor told his queerest stories, the landlord's loch was ready chorus. The storm without micht rare and rustle, Tam didn't mind the storm a whistle. Care, mad to see a man sae happy, e'en drowned himsel among the nappy. As bees flee hame wi' lades of treasure, the minutes winged their ways wi' pleasure. Kings may be blessed, but Tam was glorious, o'er all the ills of life victorious. But pleasure are like poppy spread, you seize the flower, its bloom is shed, or like the snow falls in the river, a moment white, then melts forever. Or like the borealis rays, that flit ere you can point their place, or like the rainbow's lovely form, vanishing amid the storm. Nae man can tether time nor tide. The hour approaches, Tam mun ride. That hour o' nicht's black arch, the key stane. That dreary hour he mounts his beast in, and sic a nicht he taks the road in, as ne'er poor sinner was abroad in. The wind blew as hard, 'twad blown its last. The rattling showers rose in the blast. The speedy gleams the darkness swallowed. Loud, deep, and lang the thunder bellowed. That nicht a child micht understand. The deil had business on his hand. If I were to make so bold as to try to distill the essence of what makes Burns so great, I'd have to highlight from among so many of his great qualities his refreshing attitude towards the contradictions which exist in all of us. Burns understood that two different emotions can exist in the same heart, and he wasn't afraid to open himself up to criticism that he was being inconsistent. It is this which is at the root of his humanity. Burns's work is full of the complexities and shades of opinion which are found in all of us. He could approach a subject from a cool and logical direction, then in a different work let his heart take fancy, taking exactly the opposite line. By way of example, Burns lived in the aftermath of the last Jacobite rising. Like most Scots of the day, Burns was opposed to the Jacobites on rational grounds. He was a Presbyterian and a Calvinist who in his sober, rational moments would write to Robert Graham, "I look upon the British Constitution as settled and the Revolution to be the most glorious constitution on earth." If his head was with the government, his heart was with the romantic young prince and his followers. Like most Scots, he was split down the middle. But unlike most, he was not afraid to admit it when he wrote, "It was all for a rightfu' king, we left fair Scotland's strand. It was all for a rightfu' king, we e'er saw Irish land, my dear, we e'er saw Irish land." As in all things, Burns found forgiveness in his heart for the damage which had been done to his country by the recent attempts by the Stuarts to win back the throne. His compassion can be seen in this letter to the Edinburgh Courant, 8th November 1788.
I went last Wednesday to my parish church, most cordially to join in grateful acknowledgements to the author of all good for the consequent blessings of the glorious Revolution. Bred and educated in revolution principles, the principles of reason and common sense, it could not be any political prejudice that made my heart revolt at the harsh, abusive manner in which the reverend gentleman mentioned the House of Stuart. We may rejoice sufficiently in our deliverance from past evils without cruelly raking up the ashes of those whose misfortune it was, perhaps, as much as their crimes, to be the authors of these evils, cursing a few ruined, powerless exiles who only harboured ideas and made attempts that most of us would have done had we been in their situation. Aye. Aye. By his sympathies for the Stuarts, we can see that Burns had a deep respect for his fellow man, whatever their station. He treated all men as equals and brothers. Who could not be moved by the direct appeal of
Is there for honest poverty that hangs his head and all that? The coward slave would pass him by. We'd nor be paid for all that. For all that and all that, our toils obscure and all that. The rank is but a guinea stamp, the man's the gowd for all that. What though in hamely fare we dine? We're hodden grey and all that. Gie fills their silks and knaves their wine, a man's a man for all that. For all that and all that, their tinsel show and all that. The honest man, no e'er sae poor, is king of men for all that. You see yon Birkie, God a Lord, with struts and stairs and all that. Though hundreds worship at his word, he's but a kiff for all that. For all that and all that, his ribbon, star and all that. The man o' independent mind, he looks and laughs at all that. A prince can make a belted knight, a marquis, duke and all that. But an honest man's abin his might, get faith him in for that. For all that and all that, their dignities and all that, the pith o' sense and pride o' worth, are higher rank than all that. Then let us pray that come it may, as come it will for all that sense and worth o'er all the earth shall bear the gree and all that. For all that and all that, it's coming yet for all that man to man the world o'er shall brothers be for all that. Burns detested hypocrisy, and in an age where intolerance was still the order of the day, he preached toleration. But in the next breath, he might let fly with fiery vitriol. Despite his genuine compassion for his fellow man, he protested that he held no compassion for critics of works he had written.
critics? Appalled, I venture on the name, those cutthroat bandits in the paths of fame. Bloody dissectors, worse than 10 Munros. He hacks to teach, they mangle to expose. The Poet's Progress. Your critic folk may cock their nose and say, how can you e'er propose, you wha ken hardly verse fae prose, to mak a sang? But by your leave, my learned foes, you're maybe wrang. Epistle to John Leprake.
For further proof of the contradiction in Burns's work, although he hated war and wrote much against it, he could still write stirring lines of martial glory, such as Scots wha hae. It's hard to believe, but the same poet and patriot who could pen such stirring lines also wrote against war.
Away upon you, men o' state, that brethren rouse in deadly hate. As ye make mony a fond heart mourn, say may it on your heads return. O Logan, sweetly dost thou glide. Scots, wha hae wi Wallace bled, Scots wham Bruce has often led, welcome to your gory bed or to victory. Now's the day, and now's the hour, see the front o' battle lower. See approach proud Edward's power, chains and slavery. Wha will be a traitor knave? Wha can fill a coward's grave? Wha sae base as be a slave? Let him turn and flee. Wha for Scotland's king and law, freedom's sword will strongly draw. Freemen stand or freemen fall, let him follow me. By oppression's woes and pains, be your sons in servile chains. We will drain our dearest veins, but they shall be free. Lay the proud usurpers low. Tyrants fall in every foe, liberties in every blow. Let us do or die. The greatest and most direct of Burns' anti-war poems is I Murder Hate. Written in his early 20s, the maturity of sentiment conceals the poet's tender years, as portrayed in the following extract. I murder hate, by field or flood, though glory's name may screen us. In wars at hame I'll spend my blood, life-giving wars of Venus. The deities that I adore are social peace and plenty. I'm better pleased to make one more than be the death o' 20. His razor-sharp mind was also able to condense a similar sentiment into very few lines on seeing the pomp and circumstance of a national celebration of victory in war. Ye hypocrites, are these your pranks, to murder men and gie God thanks? Desist for shame, proceed no further. God won't accept your thanks for murder. Thanksgiving for a national victory. Burns was a devout Christian, but he was also at times a philanderer and a drinker. All of these elements are found condensed into one of his greatest works, Holy Willie's Prayer, which deals in turn with hypocrisy, lust, jealousy, drink and religion. Who else but Burns could brew such a heady cocktail as this?
O thou, wha in the heavens dost dwell, wha as it pleases best thyself, sends yen to heaven and ten to hell, all for thy glory, and no for ony good or ill I've done afore thee. I bless and praise thy matchless might, when thousands thou hast left in night, that I am here alone, thy sight, for gifts and grace, a burning and a shining light to all this place. What was I, or my generation, that I should get sick exaltation? I would deserve sick just damnation for broken laws. 5,000 years are my creation, through Adam's cause. When frae my mother's womb I fell, the mighty plunged me into hell, to gnash my gooms, to weep and wail in burning lakes, where damned devils roar and yell, chained to the stakes. Yet I am here a chosen sample to show thy grace is great and ample. I'm here a pillar in thy temple, strong as a rock, a guide, a buckler, an example to all thy flock. But yet, O Lord, confess I must, at times I'm fashed with fleshly lust, and sometimes too with world-ladled trust, vile self gets in, but thou remembers we are dust, defiled by sin. O Lord, yestreen thou kens we beg thy pardon, I sincerely beg. O may in earth be a living plague to my dishonour. I'll never lift a lawless leg again upon her. Besides, a further man I vow, will lease his lass 3 times a trow. But Lord, that Friday I was fou when I come near her, or else thou kens thy servant true would never steer her. Maybe thou lets this fleshly thorn buffet thy servant e'en and morn, lest he our pruned and high should turn, that he's so gifted. If say, thy hand man e'en be born until thou lift it. Lord, bless thy chosen in this place, for here thou hast a chosen race. But God confound their stubborn face, and blast their name, will bring my elders to disgrace and open shame. Lord, mine go in Hamilton's deserts, he drinks and swears and plays at cartes. Yet is he money tucking earths, we great and small, frae God's ain priest the people's hearts he steals them all. And when we chasten him therefore, thou kens we bred sic a splore, and set the world in a roar of laughing at us. Curse thou his basket and his store, kale and potatoes. Lord, hear my earnest cry and prayer against that presbytery o' air. Thy strong right hand, Lord, make it bear upon their heads. Lord, weigh it down and in despair for their misdeeds. O Lord, my God, that glib tongue aching. My very heart and soul are quaking to think how we stood sweating, shaking and pished with dread, while all his hanging lip was snaking and hid his head. Lord, the day of vengeance triumph. Lord, visit them that would employ him, and pass not in thy mercy by him, nor hear their prayer, but for their people's hearts destroy him, and dinna spare. But Lord, remember me and mine, with mercies temporal and divine, that I for gear and grace may shine, excel by name, and all the glory shall be thine. Amen. Amen.
The heady mix of emotions that seethe under Holy Willie's Presbyterian exterior are less complicated than in Burns' simple view of nature. He detested cruelty and the inhuman treatment of animals, and he was constantly moved by the sorry sights which confronted him. The most moving of Burns' animal poems must surely be On Seeing a Wounded Hare Limp by Me, inspired by the pitiful sight of the wounded hare which Burns saw at Mosgiel in 1789. Two mornings ago, as I was sowing the fields at a very early hour, I heard a shot, and presently a poor little hare limped by me, apparently very much hurt. You will easily guess this set my humanity in tears and my indignation in arms.
See you again, man. It's good to see you.
Sit yourself down.
Hi.
How are you doing? How's Gee?
I've entitled this one On Seeing a Wounded Hare Limp by Me. Inhuman man, curse on thy barbarous art, and blasted be thy murder-aiming eye. May pity never soothe thee with a sigh, nor ever pleasure glad thy cruel heart. Go live, poor wanderer of the wood and field, the bitter little that of life remains. No more the thickening brakes and verdant plains to thee shall home or food or pastime yield. Seek, mangled wretch, some place of wonted rest. No more of rest, but now thy dying bed. The sheltering rushes whistling o'er thy head, the cold earth with thy bloody bosom pressed. On seeing a wounded hare limp by me. To Mrs. Dunlop, 21st of April, 1789. I have always had an abhorrence at this way of assassinating God's creatures, but at this season, when the object of our treacherous murder is most probably a parent, perhaps the mother, and of consequence to leave little hapless nurslings to perish with hunger amidst the pitiless wild, such an action is not only a sin against the letter of the law, but likewise a deep crime against the morality of the heart. To Patrick Miller, 21st of June, 1789. But, of course, it was not just from the natural world that Burns drew his inspiration. With a domestic life as complicated as his, it is no small wonder that his love of poetry and songs are without equal. A fond kiss. My love is like a red, red rose. And the immortal Banks and Braes are just three of his best known.
A fond kiss, and then we sever. If I will, and then forever, deep in heart-wrung tears I'll pledge thee, warring sighs and groans I'll wage thee. Had we never loved so kindly, had we never loved so blindly, never met or never parted, we had ne'er been broken-hearted. Fare thee weel, thou first and fairest, fare thee weel, thou best and dearest, thine be ilka joy and treasure, peace, enjoyment, love and pleasure. A fond kiss and then we sever. If I will, alas, forever, deep in heart-wrung tears I'll pledge thee, warring sighs and groans I'll wage thee.
Ye banks and braes o' bonny Doon, who can ye bloom sae fresh and fair? Who can ye chant, ye little birds, and I sae weary, fu' o' care? Thou'll break my heart, thou warbling bird, that wantons through the flowering thorn. Thou minds me o' departed joys, departed, never to return. Oft hae I roved by bonny Doon, to see the rose and woodbine twine, and ilka bird sang o' its love, and fondly sae did I o' mine. We licht some hert a pood a rose, fu' sweet upon its thorny tree, and my false lover storm arose, but he left a thorn wi' me.
My love is like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. My love is like a melody that's sweetly played in tune. As fair art thou, my bonny lass, so deep in love am I, and I will love thee still, my dear, till a' the seas gang dry. Till a' the seas gang dry, my dear, and the rocks melt wi' the sun, and I will love thee still, my dear, while the sands o' life shall run. And fare thee weel, my only love, and fare thee weel a while, and I will come again, my love, though it were 10,000 mile.
So this was the genius that was Robert Burns, a poet, philosopher, philanderer, lover, and a drinker. Lord Byron knew the worth of Burns, and he captured his art with a brother poet's insight. What an antithetical mind! Tenderness, roughness, delicacy, coarseness, sentiment, sensuality, soaring and grovelling, dirt and deity, all mixed up in that one compound of inspired clay. Byron certainly recognised the genius of Burns, but it is Scotland where Burns will be forever remembered, because it was the people and the land of Scotland that Burns cared for most. My heart's in the Highlands. My heart is not here. My heart's in the Highlands, a-chasing the deer, a-chasing the wild deer and following the roe. My heart's in the Highlands wherever I go. Farewell to the Highlands. Farewell to the North, the birthplace of valour, the country of worth. Wherever I wander, wherever I rove, the hills of the Highlands forever I love. Farewell to the mountains high covered with snow. Farewell to the straths and green valleys below. Farewell to the forests and wild hanging woods. Farewell to the torrents and loud pouring floods. My heart's in the Highlands, my heart is not here. My heart's in the Highlands, a-chasing the deer, chasing the wild deer and following the roe. My heart's in the Highlands, wherever I go.